not just use this time while others coming. What I had seen last time was answering the questions, right? But this is not common to the last time because I have been examining several questions even elsewhere. This is the common observation I had seen because people, I don't know what happens there, but again, they don't read the question. That's the impression I have, right? And usually some questions are, I know that you get a very long question. I think I will say the examination took now such, say, questions. It's okay. But in the case of even small questions, which I have said a few times, they were just combined questions. People appear to have not trained the question properly. Not properly. Sometimes I believe they don't get it out. Right? So, this is something which you have to understand. Other than in those long questions, short questions, every word in the question matters. Right? So, you have to give weight to all the words there, not the small word. So this is something I think might guide you in the answers. The other thing is that this is common, I think, that we have questions, but when you don't know, you write anything you know. Right? So this is also done. But it has to be avoided, right? Just find that question, you don't have to write pages and pages. Sometimes the question, the answer might occupy only half a page even. The items are there. In all the questions, there is a marking scheme. If the things which are not in the marking scheme are there, whatever imperative things, you will not be given credit. So you have to focus on the question and answer the question, not anything else. And this is, I have seen in many cases, not engineers, but again students also. I don't know if it's coming from the education system or something, but we will not get marks. Now last time there were, I think I will say, we have discussed this also. The median mark of certain questions were just 5 or 7. Right? That is the number of marks which I have got. So we can of the whole population from the So this shows that there is something critically wrong. So obviously, I think its own assessments or corrections for the question making. But again, answers were so bad as everyone can see. Because questions are said by many people. It cannot be that large number of questions giving such low marks. Very wrong somewhere. So whatever the corrections which needed to be done by yeah. But again, you have to focus on my observations of these particular questions. Not that you are not probably you are not right, and writing various relevant things. Some are not even distantly connected with the question. So sorry. You all are graduates of some sort, and you have answered so many lecture papers from another thing. Okay. Has anyone counted the number of question papers you have written from O-level up to now? Yeah, it will be I have done 111, right? All competitive exams, but public exams, university papers, and 100. So that is the number probably you will ultimately end up at the end of the career, but you might have already done at least 70, I would say. So this is the case. I don't know how to have done that 70 papers all this time. It is also calling into question now past performance as well. So shall we start now? I really don't like people sitting at the back because there is a focusing problem here. You might not see certain slides which are smaller in text. Unfortunately, we don't have the printed slides as well. So this problem is there if you are seated at the back. I am Bandula Tilakasena, formerly of CEB. I would be doing this lecture on infrastructure energy, basically focusing on electricity sector and the petroleum sector. Now I have asked ISL to put in the web the full version of this presentation because it is a bit too long and I have inserted certain data type of things in the slides which I don't have in these slides, so I will be skipping those slides. But if you want further information, best one is to download the slides version in the web. So with that note, again I am only focusing on electricity and petroleum sector. But there are other energy related entities or sectors in Sri Lanka now. But they are all subsets of this, I must say. So you might be getting the whole picture. But again, as going with the presentation slides, although I have all this data and various information in the slides, I would be talking to you on the whole picture of the electricity sector or energy sector. Right? So only the supporting information will be there, but you have to think in that direction because this is kind of a general question paper. You have to understand the whole picture of electricity and the petroleum sector, especially in Sri Lanka. They have not, I think, gone into the foreign experiences. So look at this in that fashion. So I will be talking various things, sometimes without the backup of the presentation slides even. So sometimes it will be a bit confusing to see this. We'll see. So in my presentation, I have basic several headings. So I will be discussing these in some way or another, but sometimes it may be mixed also, right? So as demand and supply of electricity, I have two main headings: electricity and renewable energy, and the petroleum, right? Gas, everything is inside petroleum. Renewable energy and electricity, renewable or otherwise, is separate. So demand and supply of electricity history, I have so many slides, but I will not be talking about each slide, but I will talk about some of the salient features of salient happenings in the history of electricity. Then the present institutions and their roles and regulations. These are operational institutions, and there are few regulatory type institutions at the product. Then costs and future. In petroleum, I will have a brief history of petroleum. And petroleum sector is bit simpler than electricity sector due to various reasons. It had not come to the same development as institutionally, I must say, as the electricity sector. So the only institution which has some authority is the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, although the Public Utilities Commission has some role, but again it is not yet fully enforced in the legislation. Then I might not be talking about that, but those slides will be there, prospecting for oil and gas in the Mana Basin basically. I have some slides, and those activities are taking place in a very slow pace. How many of you are here from this energy sector per se? Just put up your hand. All are non-energy people. Electrical? Electrical engineers? Nobody. Mechanical? All other civil. Right. So this is will be a problem because only 2 people are being familiar with the mechanics of the thing. If there is any question, please ask me at any time. I have no problem. Just put up your hand. I will answer. But there is a time limitation, so that I will, while answering, I will take that also into account if it is a long answer. Oh, please. Perspective is wrong. Huh? It shows correct here. Now, this is energy supply in Sri Lanka. Now, this is petroleum. This you may not see this properly. Biomass, non-conventional renewable energy. If any of these terms are not familiar, just ask me. Right? I will explain what the terms is. Now, non-conventional renewable energy is. Now, major hydros are there in Sri Lanka, that was there for the last 56 years or so. And there are small hydros, wind power, solar power, and various other renewable energy sources are being discussed at the moment about. And those are lumped as non-conventional energy. Those are small in size, because major hydros are generally more than 20, 30 megawatts up to hundreds of megawatts, but these are essentially less than 10 megawatts of size each. And we have the other classification, major hydro. And this is further divided into various other sub-sources. Right? Now what you can see is, the bigger picture is that Sri Lanka's energy supply, 40% is biomass. Sometimes it may be a surprise to some of you. Biomass is that in Sri Lanka still, now this is 2017 data, people are using firewood for energy supply. Right? It is even in commercial side, households, you can understand, okay, the rural people still use firewood, that's all right. But you know, these bakeries or other places, even in urban areas, still use firewood, right? And also in the industrial sector, some of the bigger industries, not very large industries, still use firewood for their boilers, right? So this is the reality. Although we had been talking about petroleum, coal and various things, still biomass is the most predominant thing. So you can see of the biomass, even firewood is 34%, and the other ones, other subsection of that is bagasse and agro residues, only 1%. Right? So this reality is something which is actually focusing, making us to focus on the energy picture, because still Sri Lanka, whatever said and done, we are not sophisticated as to use petroleum or coal or any other thing. Right? People still use firewood mainly due to cost reasons. All the other energy sources are costly and imported, except for many major hydros. The recurrent cost of renewables is free, but again the capital costs are very, very high. So in that sense, the whole is 60% of the thing is imported somehow or another. Here the technology is imported, here the technology as well as the fuel is imported. Now again this is 2017 data. Energy use now. The previous one is energy supply, energy sources, and now supply and use. Right? This is the same picture as it was earlier. Now, I don't know whether this is different. So now electricity has been lumped into another section. That's why the percentages are different, right? Hydroelectricity and whatever the electricity sources are now lumped differently. Now see the use. Almost all three are the same: road transport, household, commercial, and other industries. There is a small part of air transport and rail transport. You can lump that also into the same thing. So this division, almost equal division of 30%, had been there for, I don't know, from the time we started our careers. Right? So it has not changed so far. So what does that mean? We had been stagnant in all the kinds of development. Or we had been talking, the numbers may be higher, but the proportion never changed so far. It has to change, but again it did not happen due to various reasons taking place over the last 50, 60 years or so. Now see what has happened. Household, commercial and other, this is marginally larger than the other two. See the productive energy use, the energy used for productive, say, to make things or export things or that. Now, this is not at all that. Household is we are just consuming. Like I'm not saying we are wasting or anything, but we are consuming energy for our own living. Right? That has been increasing. The living standards have been going up, and the type of equipment we use at home have changed. But still, it is not productive as in that sense. Right? Commercial. Now there have been a lot of commercial buildings, lot of commercial activity taking place in Sri Lanka. All this commercial energy, now this commercial, what we mean is restaurants, hotels, that kind of things, right? Not industrial, but other large consumers. Okay? Now what are they using energy for? Commercial. Forget about households. What is the main use of energy in commercial sector? Yeah, it is also part of just personal comfort, and it contributes to the economy, there's no doubt. But again, it is not one-to-one productive as any others. So we had been using energy, and we are still using energy for non-productive things, unfortunately. Industries, there are limitations in industries, right? But still, it had not picked up. Then road transport. Now road transport, as you know, road transport is a problem sector in Sri Lanka, right? Road transport actually, if the public transport is there, road transport cost should not have been this. The rail transport as well as public other buses or whatever, if it is there, the road transport will, I think, about 1/4 we can take out, because nobody will resort into your personal transport, motorbike or car or whatever. If the buses are there, we will happily go in the buses. So this is another problem sector. So now this picture has not changed. That is, I think that should be our worry of Sri Lanka. Why this picture has not changed so far? To change this, it will need lot of effort. Now, for example, the railway electrification, we had been talking for years and years, still nothing is on the ground, I must say, but some concrete plans are in place, hopefully. So, these are the things which you might need to understand and critically evaluate the things. Now, I use the word critically. Now, I was talking about the question papers before the crowd came. If this word is there in a question, critically, right? You have to be critical, right? Critical means the pluses and minuses both will have to be given. If the pluses are only given, you will lose 50 marks right away, and your evaluation will be from 50, right? So if it is something critical, I have seen this word in many questions. So what probably you have done is, you had talked about one aspect of the question without critically analyzing the issue. So critical means it has to be double-sided. Okay. Now, as you all are not familiar with the electricity sector, this is very common in power systems operation. Now you don't see these things. What is here is the time of the day, from midnight to the midnight, right? And this is the total system load. So this is how the total system energy consumption varies during the day, right? Now, if I may just explain, as many of you are not familiar with this, early hours of the day, from midnight to about 4 o'clock, very lowest energy use. This is around 100 megawatts, nearly 900 megawatts, right? This is a 2017 figure. Then it rises and it peaks at around 637 and then drops, and then there is a steady flat growth, and again it peaks up around at about 738, right, and drops. Now what does this show? What does this show? This is our usual living pattern. We get up at about 4 o'clock, right? I don't know what time you are getting up. Right? Generally, people in Sri Lanka are getting at 4 o'clock, especially the suburban people. They have to cook, and so now they are cooking in arrive, right? Then travel. Now these two troughs are people traveling, right? This is before work, this is after work, right? And come home, light up the house, and go down. So this is our living pattern, really, right? So look at this in this now. Now what the rail transport or railway electrification is trying to do is to fill this up. Now there is energy. Energy means there is capacity. There are power plants which could supply this much of power, but they are not utilized in these two troughs, right? So now railway electrification will fill these two up. Okay. So like that, there are certain other measures. Now, the power plant operation is most efficient if this is totally flat. Throughout the day, same load without any change, the power plants could work most efficient. But it is not so in many countries, except for Japan or one or two countries. It is something like this, right? Sometimes the peaks, the times are different, but there is a pattern. So, as power plant operators, they would like to have a flat load and to fill these things. And here. So, that is how the power plant operations, I am not going to talk about that. But again, what you have to realize is, this is our living pattern. And I will give you an example, personal experience. This one here, this is the peak, right? Now, when we first came to see in 1980s, I don't know whether you will see this. It was something like this. Right? Now, it was during our time, Sri Lanka first had TV, right? In 1980-81 time, right? IPN came. As soon as TV came, because we were there before TV time and after TV time while doing operations, right? What happened was, this peak just flattened here. So now it is there. Because people started watching TV little more from 7 o'clock to 10 o'clock. Again, people today are going to sleep at 7:30 or 8. Right? People started watching TV, and this was very prominently seen at that time, the change in the load. So then another experience, you all might have been living at that time, 1996, when the World Cup was won by Sri Lanka. Right? After the World Cup was Sri Lanka won on 12th of March, right? And there was an interview with Sanat Jayasuriya on Rupoi about 2-3 days back after they arrived in Sri Lanka. Right? At that time, the normal peak load was around 900 megawatts, right? Now that day when Sanat Jayasuriya was interviewed at 7 o'clock, right? 7 o'clock on Rupoi. Check in his program records. This shot up to 1000. And that was the first time when the system recorded 1000. But again, thereafter it was low. Again it came to 900 and after some long time picked up 1000. So these are the things which are observed in this. This information is very valuable to understand what we are doing during the day. Average. Now, if you look at your household, if you can plot something like this, it will definitely show you living pattern. Right? So these are again connected. Let me just show something else. Now this is a study which we have done in 2002, but still the numbers may be not relevant, numbers may be different, but the patterns are the same. This is energy used by average domestic consumer. What you are doing at your home. This is lighting, this is TV, blue. I said time, the time is on this side. And this is again lighting, early cooking lighting, night lighting. This is fan, this is also fan. Electric cooking. Now electric cooking is included in the rice cookers are also included. That is why, right? Otherwise nobody is using cooking these days. So the way to this average for whole Sri Lanka, right? Now what I want to again, you can analyze this in hundreds of ways to understand what is happening. Right? See these ones, the fan. What is the fan doing in the night? And this is the second most load. What is the fan doing in the night? Why do people have fan? Just think about it. Huh? Yeah, the house design is another issue, but still, that's one of the issues. But again, electricity wise or the fan wise, this is mosquitoes. After net so these are the things which I think is very valuable social information which you have. Now this cooking example is that, right? Then refrigerator. Now see, refrigerator, we had been telling all the consumers all the time that refrigerator don't open and close it all the time. So this is this morning opening and closing, and the other one is hidden inside this. It is not shown, right? It is actually inside this big blue one. So these are the things which you can, if you can plot these things, and this study was very time-taking and long study which took place between 2001 and 2002, and it was not updated thereafter. So now the things may be different because there are new types of equipment have come, especially now we have seen during the last 4-5 years the Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is, if you have a Wi-Fi router at home, it is on all the time. Although it is 10-11 watts, it will occupy the whole base load of the house. Right? So like that, there are other complications. But so now with these two graphs, which I wanted to show you was that this energy consumption and the lifestyle are one and the same. So you have to look at and critically think of these things, why this is happening, why that is happening and all. Actually at that time we segregated these. Now lighting, whether it is incandescent or whether it is CFL or whether it is, at that time LED was not there. So like that there was a vast study done to understand how people use energy, especially electrical energy at home. Now those are what I have been talking about, are the social things, right? Sanitary or the energy use at home or whatever, margin low, right? Now come to another one. Electricity demand. February 3rd, 2018 was a very dry day. Right? No rain during that whole period of February, probably, January, February. And 2017, that is previous year, 2017 October was very wet period. Right? It was not only one day, but the wet period before and after. Now see the difference. The hydro energy has occupied more than 40%. Right? Whereas on in February it was just only 25%. So now the energy pattern, now coal had been the same, 46, 49, okay? And the composition change between hydro and oil had been varying from wet to dry to like that. So now what does that mean? Now I told that energy from hydro power, whatever small hydro, solar, whatever, is free. So during this time of the year, the cost of generation is significantly lower than the first half. Right? First half it is almost same, 75% oil or whatever, some imported energy. So this difference is there due to the environmental, climatological reasons. Right? And this pattern is same. Right? Sometimes what happens is, now October, this is the northeast monsoon period. Northeast monsoon might fail and we might have an extended dry period. But again, dry and wet costs are different. Costs of generation are different, so because of that, costs are different. Right? Now people had been talking about pricing formulas. Right? Now you know the pricing formula for fuel, something is there, no? Formula not, but there is something there. Now say, if the proper pricing formula was there for electricity, monthly varying, what will happen? There will be drastic ups and downs, leaving aside all these arbitrary decisions. Scientifically, there are large ups and downs of the cost of energy, and your tariffs will have to be ups and downs. Right? Domestic consumers will be very happy about that. Right? So they can be happy. But how can the industry survive in that situation? Industry cannot do that. Somebody is producing something, he can't price these things with the changing electricity prices, right? So these are the problems. So that is one of the reasons why there is electricity pricing formula which has been approved by the Public Utilities Commission. Still, it has not been implemented due to those problems, not due to any reason or any other reasons as well. But because of the Sri Lanka's total susceptibility to the climate in energy prices, right? So this is again now caused by the annual. Network annual. So it is very susceptible to the climate patterns. So this is the second aspect of energy in Sri Lanka, the susceptibility of energy use and the energy generation. Now, if I go back to the previous slide, sorry, I don't have a slide for that. Now here, this change in no, I don't have a slide. Now, this seasonal change in generation is reflected in the seasonal demand as well. Sorry, I don't have a slide there to show the dates here. Now, this is evident even for one single rainy day. Today is very dry. If tomorrow is rainy day, there is a significant change in the demand right there. Not because of lines are blown out by rain or wind, right? This is due to again air conditioning. As somebody had mentioned here, our commercial load is air conditioning. Air conditioning, whether you reduce or not, the thermostats evaporate and reduce the air conditioning level. So this is very significant. But during the wet season, demand is also low, the cost is also low. During the dry season, it is high. Both sides. Demand is also high because people will resort into air conditioning, and the cost of generation is also high. So this is a kind of a unmanageable situation, demand and supply wise, and that is why the power are not for averaging it over a year, but still that is an issue which averages over the year, and it gets us reasonable costs and demand picture. Now, there is another thing. This is the relationship between GDP growth and electricity demand growth, right? Two growths, right? Now, blue one is electricity, the brown one is GDP. So all this time you can see when this goes down, this is down. When this goes down, this is down. When this goes up, this is up. So it was corresponding all this time from 1994. I have data from 2006 or 7. Right? Now, see, after this, 2009 also, don't get these dates politically related because everybody tries to get all this data, or here comes political relation. So there is no political relation, right? And people have been interpreting these political terms. Right? Now, these ups and downs just vanished. Now, this is up, this is also. This is down, this is more down. Right? So this opened up, and even in the next year, it opened. So everybody was blaming this government, that government, central bank, you are fudging the GDP growth and all these other stories. But these things, right? Why did this happen actually? Now, electricity growth and the GDP growth had been corresponding. So one reason or one thing which people had suspected was central bank was doing something. Leaving aside that, assume that central bank had done the work professionally. What has happened here is, you might remember, this era, there was a war, right? But despite the war, the government had been looking at the agricultural sector more, right? All the economic activity of the agricultural sector and the service sector was the focus of the government. Government did not go for any government or the private sector, whoever. Large industrial development type, right? So the results were seen here because this energy and those agricultural activities, the relationship is very small. Sri Lanka, we don't use pumping energy, right? We don't use energy for irrigation, right? Agricultural growth, it is happening independent of electricity. So like that, the earlier the correlation which was there for energy growth and the GDP growth was lost from here onwards by the government policy, government economic policy. Government was looking at service sectors are this airports or the ports and various other things, right? Government did not focus on high industrial growth, it is the case still. Right? This relationship or the correlation disentangled. So now you can see from the three things I have been talking about, the electricity energy, right? It may be some of some relevance in the petroleum sector as well, is dependent on various things which are not engineering. We were thinking, was in this state thinking that okay, we are engineering and all. But see that it is not so. Firstly, it was social, right? Whatever you do at home is affecting the system, and system will adapt to that. And there are other things also nowadays taking place, but leaving aside those things, but I mean is the demand side management matters, right? To manage the demand. But otherwise, all this time, the energy supplier was catering for the demand of the user. Right? But user is using on various social contexts. Right? Number one. Number two, the energy demand and supply cost, everything is related to climate. And climate timing, shorter term environment, but longer term, of course, yes. Right? And now, the policy. Now, this is an example of a policy, but again, there may be other policies which might have affected energy demand, but GDP is the overall total economic picture of the country. So like that, there are various non-engineering things now affecting the energy and thereby engineering. Right? So keep that in mind. You are not in isolation. You have to look into all these aspects of energy in making while doing energy project or energy forecast. Right? Now I told at the beginning I have the history, the full history of electricity development, but I will not go through these things. Electricity first came to Sri Lanka in 1882, right? Before that nobody had seen electricity or anything like that. But mind you, when did Michael Faraday found this electromechanical induction? There is the electrical engineering. There are two, right? When did he found it is not an invention? 1835, right? So now within 50 years, Sri Lanka had electricity. Right? Now like that I will give, but again, what I want you to see is the first time people saw an electric light in 1882. By I don't know, just 13 years after, there is an act, electricity ordinance. So the British government at that time, they had a law for electricity. So what had prompted that? Within such a short time, why the British government wanted a law for electricity? Electricity by that time, I don't know how many electricity consumers are there generating. But this is because of the safety, public safety, right? This act is just one page act. It talks about safety only, right? And it is during British times, it was the governor who annexed the parliament or anything. The government had given very prominence to the safety aspect. So electricity safety has been the number one concern even of the British government side. Then came again, there was a rather short period, electricity ordinance. Right? Now this one is very curious. I don't know as far as I see, because I think I have read these old Hansards after retirement while working these things. Right? But those British legislators had gone into lots and lots of things that I don't know how they got information. There was no internet or any other thing that they can refer into. Everything would have come by mail from ships. Right? But there have been very learned discussions taking place in the legislature to make this happen. But this covered again the distribution side only. Nothing related to generation even in 1906, but there had been generators operating here and there. Then there was another thing. Now you might remember, during late engineer Vimala Surendra's time, there was an electricity board was to be established. Not this electricity board, but some other electricity board at that time. There had been lots and lots of opposition for that, not from the public. Public would not have been aware, but again, people in the parliament and the legislature, there had been a big debate about this, and Vimala Surendra was one of the people who opposed this establishment of the electricity board. I will tell you why. Right? Then, in my reading of the Hansards of 1935, the people who had been there are the fathers of the present politicians, right? Fathers or maybe the grandfathers, right? But they had been talking very sensibly, right? Sensibly for and against the thing. If you have a chance to read, you will be surprised how knowledgeable these people are than the present, not their grandchildren, right? Okay. So, with that learned discussion, what has happened was, which was established in 1935, was removed in 1937. Now, the basic problem here, as I read is, the people who had been the public or the people who had been in control were the estate owners, right? So, estate owners, I think, probably were represented through some of the parliament at the time, state council. So, state council people, and they were influencing this electricity process because they had their own electricity generation, and they were probably keen to get main supply, but tariff was their issue. So, probably that had driven all this story. But still, the discussions which were taking place had references to what is happening in India, and good source of knowledge even to understand how people had acted. Now, I told that the reason for this issue was the regulator and the operator had been the same, this electricity board. So that was the concern of all these people, right? Because if somebody is operating and he himself is regulating, that will not work, simple, right? So that is what the main objection had been. On top of that, those tariff concerns would have probably to the estate owners. They were the friends of all these people, and I think some of those people have been estate owners as well. So these learned discussions had taken place in the legislature at early times as 1937 and 1895. Then 1950 again, now this is very strange things happening at that time, because 1950 and before 1950 there had been years of discussions, years of parliamentary papers published about this act. From 1950s again, very little number of people had elected in this country. But still, they have gone into this and studied a lot and enacted. Now, the beauty of this is that this was repealed in 2009, right? So, from 1950 to 2009, this was the Electricity Act in this country. In between, what has happened was, now this time I told you that there has been very little number of generators. They may be private, they may be private generators are not there at that time, because private generators were acquired by the British government and everybody was during this time gone. Right? So then it was Government Department of Government Electrical and BGEU. It was established in 1927, so it was somewhere here until 20. Right? So that department was doing up to 2009 this thing, but in between, electricity board was established in 1960. But that did not change this. Now, the beauty is that although during that period there was no private generators, distribution or transmission was not heard of, because transmission started from Dachapana after Revolution's time. So there was no transmission, distribution and generation. But this act enabled private power in 1990. I don't know how they had foreseen that or otherwise, but there was no hindrance from this act in 1998 when CB first acquired private generation from other suppliers. Right? So that was the foresight we had seen even in all these early times, the electricity legislation. Now, this is the fourth thing which I want to tell. Now, as you have seen, from that early times up to even 1990, and I must tell about the 2002 Act. 2002 Act, this was enacted, but again repealed, right, in 2009. So even at that time, from about year 2000, there had been discussions, and that discussion went on till about 2009, when the act was enacted. But still, you might see from early times up to 2009, the Parliament had got involved, whoever the elected representatives had got involved with this electricity process right from the beginning. Although there had not been any significant number of pressure people like today's consumers, they were interested and they were looking very objectively at this whole picture of electricity. Such thing is not seen in petroleum sector. I will just have one slide. In the petroleum sector, there was no such thing taking place at any time. Right? I can't imagine why, but the electricity sector was of interest to everybody I don't know what the reason is, because there is definitely there had not been any public pressure. Because there were no electricity consumers. When people were not worrying about electricity, so unimaginable situation. But what we have to take from this is that legislature or the law is also interested, had been interested in this. Firstly, because of the safety reasons. Nowadays, because of the consumer pressure. In between, I can't just imagine what the situation had been. Now, see, in 1970, the annual energy was less than 1000 GWh per annum. Energy used by whole of Sri Lanka. But now it is nearly 13,000. Now I think it is around 14,000 in 2018. Right? So this is the general growth of energy, and thereby the number of people who are having electricity. By this time, 100% of the people were having electricity. Right? So this exponential growth due to various economic reasons, development reasons, then public interest reasons, and it had gone, and the electricity sector had catered for all these things. Right? Now, maximum demand is also like that, but there has been some stagnant period, and there were some drops also, maybe power cut years. Right? So, like that, it is also reasonable growth from here. And from I think about 2002, we did not have scheduled power cuts to meet the demand. Right? We had been meeting the demand all the time. There might have been local failures here and there, but there was no scheduled power cuts affecting the whole country. So now see this picture. In 1970, probably 10% of the population, I think I have this slide. Right? 1970, about 10% or less than 10% of the population had electricity. Now 100%. Right? And population also has grown. That also, And the whole of Sri Lanka is now covered by what is shown here are the 33 medium voltage lines. All of the country is now covered, even these areas, substantial amount of electrification. Only the jungle areas are without electricity, but otherwise you can't see it. Everywhere you can see a heavy line nowadays. Right? So this is what has happened. But again, this is the whole this effort of making 10% to 100% electrification is of the government, right? CEB did not spend any money on this development, right? Because CEB cannot, this development cost is so high, CEB cannot recover those costs by the government, right? So what happened was, from about 1980s, right, the government pumped in the money for rural electrification. The government also got the loans from Asian Development Bank mainly in the West Bank, and all the money was pumped into rural electrification. And what CB did was, CB constructed those things and operated and now maintained. Right? So even those loans, traditionally, if it is a generating station or transmission line, the loan will be transferred from government to CEB, but these loans were not transferred to CEB either. Right? So that whole cost was borne by the government. So forget about again colors of the government, it was happening all the time. Right? So it is the commitment of the government which resulted in 100% electrification, which is not there even in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Maldives is there, but otherwise it is not there. It is because of that only Sri Lankans had 100% electrification. I think still CEB talks proud about that to achieve that. And now what has happened is during the last few years, to reach the last mile, a lot of load schemes now. There had been situations even in 2014-15 that time. Although the line is there, people are not getting a connection because of cost reasons. They cannot afford the initial cost. So there had been a lot of loan schemes available that could be paid through the electricity bill, so that everybody could get electricity. Now the connection is given actually on a fixed cost. There is no distance. If it is 100 meters or 1 kilometer, the line is given by CEB only for that 1,000 rupees or whatever. So all these things are now looked after, and very few people they have to take also. In Colombo area, very few service connection requests coming to CEB nowadays. Right? So this is the situation, and it was prompted by various governments. The capital cost is high. Now this is the other. Now if those high capital costs, these are totally very large costs now. You see, to give a supply to a consumer at some jungle area where the main line is 5-6 kilometers away, to draw a line from that 5-6 kilometers is simply we can't afford. Single person cannot afford. Right? So all that had been made available by the government, and government paid for that. And that capital cost was not transferred to CEB, because CEB will transfer it to all the other electricity consumers, right, who are already having it. So that is also unfair in a way, because somebody who is not having electricity, why should the other people pay for him? So that, I think those might have been the considerations. So it was not translated into tariff, and due to that, people who would otherwise be left behind without electricity got electricity. Had the capital cost been translated to your, the tariff will be unbearable. You will, I don't know, will be without electricity. That should happen, because you will go back to firewood or architecture. So this is data. Again, you can look at these things. Now I come to the other thing which was happening in this country in 1990s, right? There was this concept of new renewable generation came into being because again of economic reasons. Now the oil prices, as you know, in 1973 shot up very sharply, and that made all these otherwise unviable small renewable sources viable. Right? And that trend continued even in 1990s. And in Sri Lanka, for the first time in 1993, these small renewables were given connections to the main network, so that it will feed to the grid. And that expanded rapidly. And now they occupy a significant amount of power, but not energy, because these are small sources, and from small streams or small, there are few wind farms also. You can see the wind farms is this one. So wind had picked up sometime in 2010-11 time, right? So these became automatically viable, right? Not because any government did not pay any incentive or any other thing. These became viable, and the private, it was offered to the private sector, because CEB or the governmental entities could not do large number of small power plants, and it was offered to the private sector, and private sector, because of the economic viability, they developed it on their own, right? And biomass is also picking up. These are the dendro power plants by wood chip and various other energy sources. And solar you can't see, it is still very small. Right? And this does not include solar rooftops, but large solar power. So this now again, this sector had been, I think, this 100% by the private sector. Of course, CLB will come into large wind power developments in Mana. Probably next year the power plant will be in operation, 100 megawatts. So renewable picture is, in fact, again, renewables, mainly the largest renewable sources are the hydros, small, less than 10 megawatts. Right? All these are located in the central hills or in Sattagam. And what happens is, when the water is not there, when the monsoon fails, everything fails. They will not generate at all, zero sometimes. Right? So that issue is there. They operate some, very few of them operate during the dry season, otherwise it is wet. But see the picture. In the previous picture, during the wet season, the demand is also low and the thermal generation is low and this is high. Right? So there are certain freak situations taking place due to that also, but I think those are manageable. But sometimes, early times, it had created issues in system operations because it is not done. Essentially, what I am saying is, had these been during the dry season, these renewables, it would have been helpful to everybody, because that was the time when the demand is high as well as the cost is high. But unfortunately, they are also in the same wet season and they don't contribute much to the cost picture. So that issue is there. Even wind, it is the same. Right? This is the issue of Sri Lanka being in tropics. We can't help it out. Now coming to the renewables wind, there have been various studies, but again these purple colored places are the highest wind potential. This area, I think we have around 80 megawatts of wind power now, and Mana it is going to be hundreds. And even Jakarta, I think there is a few new wind power plants come up, and here also Ambevela there is significant, but there is not much of the development. So, although what we had been talking about wind, right? Wind, of course, in 1993, that time when we first started renewables, wind was expensive because of the capital cost. Although wind is free, the capital cost per kilowatt hour or per kilowatt was much higher than the conventional sources. So, it is not economically viable at that time. But now what has happened is the technological advances have been there over the years. The cost of technology has come down. Now they can compete with even conventional energy, right? And also conventional energy cost also gone high. That they can each other. But now see, although we are talking about wind and but there is not much tsunami in Sri Lanka in the context of present-day technology. Right? Because now the wind turbine, for it to rotate, it needs certain minimum level of wind speed. Right? So if the turbine is more efficient, then it could operate at lower wind speeds and generate. So that technological development had took place even in 1990s up to now 2010s. Right? So that is what drove the costs down rather than any other aspect. The technological advances had enabled absorption of more wind, and also the wind's biggest issue, as you might have heard, is the intermittency. Right? Wind is not there when we walk. Right? Wind is there when it wants to. When the power system wants power, wind is not there. Right? But thermal power, it is not so known. If the power system wants, we can start the generator and pump energy or power. Right? So, because of this intermittency, that is common for even hydro. You have seen in the previous slides, wet season, dry season, we can't change those wet season, dry season if the power is required, right? So this intermittency issue was the biggest hindrance of connecting substantial amounts of wind to the conventional grid. Right? Now it had been overcome by various means like that, the static controllable generators, inverter, these generating inverter types of generators in the wind turbine itself, like that. There had been various technological solutions had come up for grid connections. But beyond that, we are talking about smart grids and various other newer options which are not practiced so far in Sri Lanka, with storage batteries or various other control equipment, so that the excessive energy or the lack of energy due to intermittency could be compensated then, provided to a consumer base, not the whole of a large grid, but smaller grids, what we call smart grids, right? So it is a combination of renewable power, storage, as well as other demand side measures. Right? So those are being discussed and would come into being down the line, maybe another 10 years time, 15 years time, not in Sri Lanka, but in other places in the world. So intermittency is the present issue even for hydro or wind or solar. Solar generator, but hydro not. So you have to have a storage battery or whatever something. So intermittency issue is the biggest problem of seen by the energy dispatchers, but it has technological solutions and it has to compete with other energy sources. Of course, land use is not a big issue in wind power parks, because the land which is down there could be used for various activities, not for. There are limitations, but again it could be used, unlike hydro or thermal power plant. So same solar. Now this is another misconception we are having.
Sir, in the previous slide, I have seen in most of the countries they are going beyond the land in the sea area also when it comes to wind. So are we poor in that case? For an example?
Yes. Now actually this area is good for offshore, right? But again it is very costly, right? One thing is the construction cost is horrendously high, right? If it is deep sea, you can't have. That is why we are talking about this, because here the sea is shallow, but you can't think of it in differently, right? 1 kilometer deep sea. So like that, there are limitations, high cost, as well as the connection underground cables. It has to be laid in the seabed. So the cost. So one day these problems will be solved technologically, right? But for the moment, it is costly, and we are going on land based on it. Same. Okay? Now, solar picture is also the same. Now, the biggest thing we are talking about solar rooftops, whatnot, everything, right? Now, the issue with solar is that okay, the northern hemisphere and southern hemisphere of this world, we are in the tropics, right? During summer and spring, they have cloudless skies, right? You can see nice blue skies in various places in Denmark or in Australia. Where can you imagine a cloudless sky? This we had a few days during the last month or 2 days also rather cloudless. But very rarely we have a cloudless sky. So what happens is the efficiency of the solar panel or the solar cell is obviously reduced, right? Because of the clouding. That does not give the necessary energy to the solar cell. So this is the issue we had. Now, when we first had this pilot solar power plant in Bandula, it is still in operation by Sustainable Energy Authority. Of the first 2 years, the design solar irradiance was there only for 1 day for the whole 2 years. right? But Hamakota is a fairly dry place, as you know. You might think people who are in Kandu, okay, they feel like this. Sun is there all the time in the Pina, but it is not so. Again, these things are technologically solvable. The solar panels which were there in 1990s were not capable of doing these 2 kilowatt kind of solar panel. We could not have thought about. That time it was around, as far as I remember, 30 watts or something. Right? So 30 watts versus today's 2 kilowatt, 4 kilowatt panels we are talking about. So those technological advances are taking place. Now, how many of you have solar rooftop solar at home? Right? Rooftop solar, now they give I can show you my phone. Right? They give a app so that we can monitor the solar generation. Right? Now, cloudless day, it is like this. This starts around 7 o'clock, this is around 5:36. Okay? So this is the ideal pattern it shows in my house. Right? Now, any other day, how can you be? So it is like this. So every time a cloud passes, this drops and cloud became a so typical solar pattern is this generation pattern. This is very rare. So these things one day it will be solved, but at the moment not so. Right? So even now Sri Lanka, I think these areas are very good coastal areas, and also this is the central contaminated. But otherwise central places are not so good. Right? The biggest issue with solar is the land utilization, because you can't use the land. So in that sense, solar rooftop is quite sensible, because it uses the roof. And I think in Bangladesh there is a mandatory requirement, all the roofs must have a solar. Now coming to the institutions, before coming to institutions, I will talk about there is another institution which is related to renewable energy, that is the Sustainable Energy Authority. They have some statutory duties to undertake related to energy sources. They provide energy permits. Everybody will have to have energy permit to develop renewable source. Even CEB was required to have an energy permit first time for broadlands. So like that, it is regulating in some way the land use and conflicts between, because now all these renewables are related to land. You may have a renewable source, but the land is owned by somebody. So nobody will give the land, but again SCA will intervene and do the approvals so that the conflict is not arise. Now, for example, if on a stream somebody is developing upstream and another one is developing downstream, and if the downstream one has come first and the upstream somebody is trying to do, then this man will not have water. Right? So like that, there are certain conflicts could arise, and those things are looked after in this permit process theoretically. Right? I'm not going into this one, the generation expansion plan, which is to be prepared by the transmission licensee of the CEB. So it is being prepared in some scientific manner. Now, this is the other thing. Now, this takes into account the demand forecast and the generation and the retirements and all this. But those 4 or 5 things which I mentioned, are not part of this software. So it has to be looked after at a later stage as appropriate during the construction phase or even before that during the detailed planning stages. So that is how it is happening actually as well. So these are future developments you can see in 2017 and 2020 there will be a large number of 132 kV lines coming. So one fine day the 132 will be the one kind of a distribution voltage rather than transmission voltage at this time. Then in 2032 the 400 kV transmission lines will come into the picture. These are being planned at the moment. So the new voltage, and also what is significant is there is a planned DC connection to India, but that is also talking and sometimes talking, sometimes not talking to each other. So I don't know what is happening, but that is, in my opinion, that is useful for short-term energy users, whatever the other circumstances are. But again, for only short-term energy shortages, this is, I think, not economical at all. Right? Now, if you are having an energy shortage for a dry season, we might be drawing energy from this interconnection. But it is only for dry season, otherwise we have enough energy in the system. Right? And our developments will look after those things. So only for dry period this connection is not economically viable, and it could not be proven viable in many of the feasibility studies because of not because of that reason, still because of the cost, right? So economic viability is not there, but again justification, if at all, should come from other considerations, non-economic considerations. I will briefly talk about the energy structure, but again it is not very clear. You can see these dots now. These are all parts of Ceylon Electricity Board, and black boxes are private sector energy delivery. And this is Lanka Electricity Company, which is the distributor. Now, all these Lanka Electricity Company and CEB's distribution divisions are in the distribution business, and they are having separate licenses from the Public Utilities Commission. Then transmission is the transmission network who buys electricity from all these CEB's own generation and independent power producers, private parties, and sells to distribution sector. Transmission licensee is by law, it is CEB. Then CEB generation licenses are there, licensee is there. So all these are licensed entities, even the private producers. Licenses are issued by the Public Utilities Commission. They are having, I think, licenses about 100 page book, right? So it has so many conditions for the licensees to fulfill, and there are a whole host of regulations in place in operating of this system. So these all came about after 2002 with the new act. And what we call this model is the single buyer model, because it is only this entity, whatever the transmission license is buying and selling. So there are transfer costs here and there in all these places, and the tariff to the consumer at this point is regulated by the Public Utilities Commission, and this point, these two tariffs are regulated by the Public Utilities Commission, not generation tariffs. These three are not regulated. It is regulated in the sense these are annually or whatever, 6 monthly or whatever the frequency regulated, but generation, what happens is at the time of procurement, the generation cost is subject to approval of the QCC. So that is the ideal operation of the sector, but it is not the way it is happening. You must have heard all this time what was happening. But I have given the details here.
Sometimes the government suddenly decides to buy such amount of kilowatt hour from the private sector. But sometimes cabinet approval is planned. We see it in as a news item. So how that particular thing fits
No,
in?
that is fine. Now, if I go back to this one, now electricity purchases, as I said, is subject to approval of the Public Utilities Committee. Government cannot decide. First of all, CEB cannot decide, right? If it is to be, if there is a requirement of additional generation capacity, it has to be seen in the plan, right? If something is not planned, the government cannot go and impose such conditions on CEB or anybody, right? Now, this particular one which you are talking about was in a plan, right? It was in a plan. So it is the procurement process which had gone astray. But again, now there are certain in-between steps had not been complied by CEB and the government. That is the issue. But it was originally in the plan. Procurement process was not quite proper according to the exhibit. I'll explain in time. So, if this is not in the plan, it cannot happen. Now, there have been talk, I think we are talking about the emergency power, right?
Yeah.
The emergency power is not possible according to this one. The shortage should have seen by our engineers, right? The shortage should have seen and should have remedied, right? Now, if the emergency is happening each year, that is not an emergency, right? It is a planned activity, so you can very well plan. So this emergency issue, all the time during the dry season, in December, there is a lot of talk happening on, I don't know if it is commercially driven or otherwise, this Bhitika, right? So then everybody is getting agitated. Government, if it is having an election nearby, government is the most agitated party. So, but again, if it is foreseen by the engineers have enough time. That is how the other countries are doing. They don't go for this kind of panic buying of energy or capacity. Right?
So Lanka transformers
Lanka Transformers is not in the power sector. Lanka Transformers is a manufacturing body, right? It is a subsidiary of CEB, that is true. But again, it is not having, it is another manufacturer of equipment. Right?
So they are independent power producer.
No, Lanka Transformers is a different story. I don't want to take others' time. Lanka Transformers is primarily manufacturing transformers, right? LDA, OLDs, and Lanka Transformers. Then there are a whole host of subsidiaries of Lanka Transformers, which are in other businesses, independent power and all these other things, but not Lanka Transformers. Again, it had invested in various other components, right? So Lanka Transformers is having 30% share, 20% share, 100% share sometimes. Like that, various shareholdings, they have invested money in various power plants, and they have been building also. Right? So they are like any other international contractor. But they are not in this picture on neither license, right? And CEB's money is not going there. Right? This money earned by the consumers are not going there. CEB is having the initial investment. Otherwise, they are providing the dividends on that investment. CEB has not been reinvesting money in Lanka Transformers from the beginning, after beginning. Right, I will just take this slide and skip some of the slides. Now, the licensees, CEB or LECO and the public in the parliament, right? This had gone to the parliament, from 2000 to 2009, it was in parliament, it was in the Supreme Court, it went twice into the Supreme Court. Like that, there was a long consultative process had been there involving everybody. So the expectations from this act was cost-reflective tariffs, right? Because all this time, what was happening was the tariff could not support the costs of the sector, right? Whatever we earn from the CB earns from consumers could not support all the costs of generation. Right? Generation, and there were some years even the generation cost alone could not be supported. Right? And we have one slide here. So this had to be cost effective ideally, but I have different view now. It has another aspect, right? Then licensees should be able to finance the licensed activities. If there is generation licensee should be able to finance from the revenue it gets from the transmission licensee to finance them. Right? And facilitation of consumer service. Consumers are not serviced properly, that is common grounds, right? So better consumer services. And facilitation of construction of, now during this time, now this is the change, right? In 2009, by 2009 there were a lot of objections coming from transmission line constructions. Even Norachole was under construction at that time. There were unsubstantiated opposition coming from various sources for construction of these power plants, right? Substantiated, not, I would say unsubstantiated, you might say substantiated. So to overcome this, there was a provision introduced in the Act, it is in section 52, that there are certain provisions in the Urban Development Authority Act so that the land acquisitions are more expeditious. Right? The same provisions were replicated here so that these constructions are not getting delayed due to this land acquisition project. It is not that CB will go and acquire somebody's land, but this procedural things, while the procedural thing is going on, the construction is enabled. Right? Now, with the 19th Amendment, I don't know what has happened because this was not tested thereafter. It was on presidential power. Right now, the president has no power to do that. So this thing is not happening, cannot happen now. So what has happened again? I was talking about cost-effective tariffs and charges. Now, if the cost-effective tariffs are paid, when the costs are going high and high, the consumers are called upon to pay. Is it correct? It's not very correct. Sometimes there may be inefficiencies in the system. Why should the consumers be paying for all those inefficiencies? So because of that, cost-effective tariffs, although it is there in section 30 of the Act, it is not so correctly implemented, and it was not implemented at all. Right? It did not happen, although it is there in the Act. I told that Miller Sutra and all this pricing formula did not come into being, and it was not done. So what happened was ultimately none of these happened. Only consumer services side, there had been a lot of regulations so that QCSA made some of the things streamlined, and some of the services you might, I can see about 5 years ago, it was not so, but now even the way the people talk to you are different. But all these things had not happened, although it was the original intention, right? And also now there are various issues of this model, right? Single buyer model, which I explained, and actually we have proven, now this is coming from one of the World Bank discussion papers, right? So issues they have identified, all are there in our system, right? And more than that. Now for example, the buyers, right? Now there are, let's say the buyer bought from the private sector, even within CB, and sold to LECO and again CB. They are all paper transactions, no money transactions taking place, but for outside parties, for the private sector, it is paid in money, and LECO it is paid in money. But otherwise, within CB, it is all paper transactions. So now, the buyer is the single buyer model, and because of the tariff is not sufficient to cover the costs, sometimes, not sometimes, there had been a time before Norachole coming in 2011, CB had been defaulting in payments, right, for all these buyers. But nobody went to court, and it was when the financial situation was corrected, CB paid back. So there were actually it is poor buyers reflection of a poor buyer. Lack of transparency in the procurement processes of independent power and all this you might have been hearing from the newspapers recently. It is also there. Right? There are allegations, nothing been proven so far. Rigid contractual and so these agreements, power purchase agreements and power sales agreements are again hundreds of pages. Fortunately, there had not been any arbitration or anything so far, and some have expired also after 20 years. Right? So during the whole 20 years, there had not been any repercussion from being rigid, but they are rigid. They are rigid because the lender's interests are to be safeguarded because of that. It was rigid, but hardly any arbitration. There have been 2-3 arbitrations on many high levels, but other than that, nothing. Contingent liabilities, again, the government had been assuming various risks of the system. Now, for example, although that came into being in 2009, from 2009 up to now, right? Again, don't make any relation with the colors, right? Up to now, no power plant came, not because of any other thing, because the government was, even previous governments, right, was having this notion of the profit, right? Now, these are very profitable ventures, and profit is virtually there in these agreements. Right? Now, why should we be paying a profit to somebody else, right? Now, see in this partner, there is no profit, it is cost recovery, salaries are paid, and that's okay. But there is, on top of all this, there is a profit element, which is not declared, and there is no guaranteed profit as such, but there is a capability of earning profit. No, now that is, when you turn to the consumer, if the government invests the power plant, then this profit is around 20%. 20% of the cost is substantial, some reduction, right? So that is the problem government was having while we pay this profit and increase the tax. So these are the things. And also now, my opinion is infrastructure, whatever, roads, power, or whatever, roads, whatnot, is a government responsibility. It cannot be left alone to the private sector to earn profit from infrastructure. It is government's duty to provide infrastructure, and people will benefit from using that for economic activity. Go to any other country, the infrastructure, they might have invested in infrastructure some time. Once the infrastructure was there in place and people are using, then only they have gone into private kind of toll roads or whatever the other private infrastructure. Right? Infrastructure is primarily responsibility of the government, so that would have been the government's dilemma, whether to go this way or that way. Because of that, the government interventions were there. Actually, government did not want to go in further. Government developed all the power. Virtually, proportionally, whatever the power plants came in that period were fully government funded, and CB funded, its own funds. So like that, this conflict, the economic or the policy conflict is there, whether the government should go into infrastructure or not. So it is not clearly defined, and nobody takes a clear decision as well. Then, in these agreements, there are various developers' risks, right? So what ultimately happened was, when the developer comes into a problem, the government assumes those risks. So there is no point in why the government should be in this agreement. If all the risks are assumed by the government, why not government do that? Right? So these are the biggest, conflicts we had in this single buyer operation. Now, single buyer model, if you look at internet or in textbook, these are textbook cases right now. Right? So there are various pluses and minuses, various things are talked about. But my opinion is all these models should be working, one model working in some other place will not be replicated, cannot be replicated here. Because here the systems are different, the network is different, climate is different, people are different, everything is different. People's expectations are different. So because of that, these models cannot be done unless we do our own model, we have said there as well. Something, what is happening somewhere, people are saying, okay, that is how it is done in certain places. But those are not possible. To have it here, we have to have our own menu. Now, this is the other question. Now, costs and time. Two different things, two different circumstances can be live together. Answer this question. This is the slide I was talking about. Now, the total cost of power sector operation, right? This includes everything, right? Cost of generation is 64% of the total cost. So, all this is going to coal and oil and the power purchases, those are also oil. Right? So, whatever the cost reductions, because these are controlled by foreign costs, right? Foreign exchange costs. Oil, basically oil, 64% oil, it is not in this representation, right? So, whatever the reductions, what one can do in the sector is reduce these. Now, depreciation again, this is accounting issue, so you can't do it. Transport and communication only 2%. Accommodation 1%. Material 2%. Personnel 8%. If CVs, all the people were taken away and holding automated, only 8% saving. So this is the picture. So we have to reduce the generation cost and dependence on oil or dependence on coal for that matter. So it is cheaper, and that is the very reason why CEB have been talking about coal, not anything else, just to make the cost reductions. But again, cost is not everything. That also you have to take into account. Now, I have this slide again just to show the cost. Right? Now, coal-powered Lapidary coal is running throughout the day. Right? Almost no change, 900 megawatts all the time. And these heights, if the heights are the same, they are also running throughout the day, no change. Suppose Kande, CEB fuel oil, and wind also. This is one particular day, right? Maximum demand had occurred in May. So the wind potential should have been good. So wind also had been running throughout the day. Then the changes were taken by fuel oil, Canadian CEB, and hydro. All these blue ones are hydro, and SPP is small hydro power, right? Small power purchases. So all these were taken by hydro. So the lowest cost power plants are taking the changes. The high cost power plants are supplying the base load. Okay. So what happens is, now usually, I don't know the electricity is in CEB, other places, they take, this is the highest cost. No, it is the lowest cost. Okay. Because lowest cost power plants are running at that time. So traditionally, somebody could put calories there. It is not actual operation. The lowest cost power plants are running at the top because they are easy to change. Now, virtually cannot run at top because it cannot be changed as the load changes. No, it is a thermal power plant. The thermal time constants are much higher than the hydro power time constants, right? So it cannot change, and all these cannot be changes, and changeable ones are these. So the cost, now keep that in mind, the cost, the cheapest power plants are running at the peak. Then cost and selling price. Now this is again a bit of historical data. Now again this has changed. Right? Now there was a time when the selling price was higher than cost. So that is many things. Right? But from about 2013, what has happened was selling price was almost stagnant and costs were very high. This is because of oil-based generation, right? And then costs came down. That is because of full operation of Norachodi in 2014. And costs came down, the selling price also came down. There were tariff reductions even 2-3 times when the Chinese president came, there was a price reduction came. So like that it changed. But by now I don't have the latest data. This is again like this. Right? It is the costs are high because tariff did not change. So now the cost and selling price, all these differences were taken by CEB or by the government, because government, although it does not give CEB money, government does not ever give CEB money, but government provides various other non-monetary concessions, tax reductions, bank single purchasers, single borrower limits were changed on the request of government by People's Bank and probably the Bank of Ceylon. So like that, non-monetary concessions were given. So that is how the system had been sustaining due to those concessions, right? But if that had not been there, then the system would have collapsed, because then what naturally would happen is curtailed generation. Curtailed generation means power cuts right then and there. So I am not talking for government's intervention as a positive thing, but government had done that due to various reasons. If government or the country cannot afford without electricity. Nowadays, even you may be calling the control center if electricity is not there for 10 minutes. Right? I call them if it is more than 1 hour. Right? After 1 hour only I talk, because then the lines are also free, otherwise you can't follow it. Right? And 10 minutes. So then, but people cannot, we have to admit that, right? That need of the society we have to address. Now tariffs. Right? Now I told the costs, ideally the tariff should be cost effective, but it cannot be so. Now there are poor people. Right? Even though it is low, there are people who can't afford. Now in Sri Lanka, I don't know if you have come across this statistic, there are about more than 5.5 million customers, electricity customers in the million, right? Of that, nearly 2 million are using less than 30 minutes a month. 30 minutes a month, so that is 1 minute per day. About 2 million people. So that is the level of our electricity consumption, although we have 100% electrification. There are still substantial number of households in Sri Lanka who cannot afford, but they use electricity for lighting, maybe, so that is a economic benefit for them. And there is the other group, the middle group, where I think when we belong, between 60 and 120, there is other people. The whole other people are less than 10,000. Right? But the biggest shout is coming from those 10,000 people, not from these 4.5 million people. Right? So this is the reality of the distribution of the consumer base. the biggest consumers are making the biggest right? Although they can afford also, because they can save. They consume a lot, that means they can save. But these people, 30 kilometers away, what can they say? We can switch off the light and save, that's all they can do. Right? Then cost allocation among consumers. Now, these are the ideal things, right? Now, cost allocation among consumers, if it happens economically, what happens? The costliest person to supply is that rural consumer right at the end of the line. He is the most costly. And easiest people are the Kanubi. They have it. Right? So the costliest people are the lowest, highest burden people are paying less. So you can't correct that, no, you can't ask that man at the 1 kilometer line, at the end of the line, kilometer line to pay electricity unit at 54%, 54 rupees. Right? He's given at 150 or something. Right? So the highest will be 54 or 48 per day. So this is not sustainable at all, economically or socially, not possible. So you have to give a subsidy to that man from this man. Okay? So that is why the cross subsidies are allowed by law. It is there in the legislation and it is permitted so that this social inequality is solved. Then reasonable degree of tariff stability. I was talking about large price fluctuations coming from the wet season, dry season or some other thing. Cannot have, because price stability has to be there for economic reasons so that not the domestic consumers but the other people's requirement. You can't have the price of soap or milk bottle going up and down every month, right? So to avoid that. Then principles relating to fairness and equity, there is the example of man at the end of the line. And efficient allocation of national economic resources. So if we have a large amount of renewables or large amount of indigenous power sources, you have to use them before relying on imported power. But we could not do that because of the demand prices were too high in the beginning. Right, so these are not happening actually, but the ideal tariff should do that. And tariff structures must be simple enough to facilitate metering and billing of the customers. Now, tariff structures you can't understand. As a matter of fact, you cannot calculate your own bill. That's a problem. Right? Now, we were trying to have this as simple as possible, but again now there are various misunderstandings, misinformation floating that nowhere in the world there are this block tariff. Block tariff is there always. The places where they are block tariffs, Madhya are, I think, Singapore and Japan. Even in US, the block tariffs are there, right? Because there are poor people even in US, so they have to be given electricity less than the average price, right? So tariff structures now, but our aim was to reduce the number of blocks. I think we have the tariff categories at that time, we had 6 or 7 in 2010 when the new regulatory structure came along, 6 or 7, and we proposed it by first cycle 2015 to be reduced to 4 or 5. Right? But what happened was, even before it got approved, the number of tariff categories went up rather than down. Right? So this is the political thinking of these things, and the tariff structures could not be. Now, I have been party to these tariff discussions during 2 tariff cycles. Right? Whenever I go to meet, the people are very high level people, right? The decision makers of this country. When I present the tariff structure and the economic picture, and what they look at is, Mr. Tilakasena, tell me what is the cost for 132 units? Right. But they are bigger than okay, no, this is too high. No, of how this is happening. Everybody, even people within CP, look at their bill first and then decide the tariff. It is not the way to do it. But if it is economic, you have to get the that. So that is how, and also there have been situations industrial but still those are the considerations at that level in determining the tariff. You can imagine on the situation of this cost reflectivity and all these things. So this is how it is happening in reality. I am not saying that, but again our attempt to make it simple. Now, the other thing, you might be going to cross this. If there is a jump in the block, not to 30, 30 to 60, 60 to there. So if you are at 29 units of your multiple solution, 29, or I get 119, right? So the block changes at 120. So if you change it, there is a sudden jump of this thing. If you are 119 and 121, the difference is not 2 units difference, right? It's natural. That is inherent of having a block tariff, right? So one of the parliamentarians, ministers are calling us to the parliament to actually why this can happen with one house. I don't do electricity, only 2 units by this and that. You cannot explain them this mathematics. Right? So they are looking only at their own bills and taking the decision. So these scientific things never worked in tariff in Sri Lanka. That much I can say. Right? So these are the theoretical things. Some of these are happening, some of these are not happening. But a real tariff should have cost as well as tariff, taking into account all these things. I will briefly touch on the petroleum sector as well. Petroleum sector is a bit not complicated, and it is in a way simple. Right? Now there are only 2 players: Lanka Petroleum Corporation and Lanka IOC, and third player got lost. Right? So only these 2. And this brown arrows are just the flow of oil, right? So they import oil, Petroleum Corporation import oil, and Lanka Petroleum Storage Terminals, CPSTL, is the distributor, like in CB's case, and they distribute to large users, and refinery also supplies the Petroleum Corporation, not to this. And these 2 people retail to customers and bunkering. There are bunkering operators separate, and they also import a small amount. Then the gas companies are, now there is no regulator for this sector. Right? Although Public Utilities Commission is empowered, they have no enabling legislation to regulate this, so this is left unregulated at the moment. Then gas companies are there. Gas means LP gas, we don't have any other gas. Gas companies are regulated by the Consumer Affairs Authority. You might be hearing the gas companies have made a representation to increase the price and all these things. So then the lubricants, it is a free market. Lubricants are now can be imported by anybody, and PUCSA regulates in some fashion, because there is another act for lubricants. So it is happening. I don't know, I have not come across any issue in that regulatory process. So this is how the petroleum sector operates, but mainly as far as the customers are concerned, this sector is unregulated. This is the whole history of petroleum. I will not go through this. And this petroleum, you can see, although Electricity Act came into being in 1895, the Petroleum Act came to being in 1961. So all this time there was no law even. Right? Although Sri Lanka had first petroleum productive ලාභ පාවිච්චි කළ දින 1961. So I think during the intervening time, the oil companies were having the control over the whole thing. So I will not go through these things. These are just facts, really. But again, as I have said, there was no legislative interventions for petroleum, hardly any. Then this recent detailed pricing formula was implemented in 2002. Then it went to disuse, and now it is again in use. I don't know what from there, even percentage. But mind you, there is a formula approved by Public Utilities Commission for electricity also. Right? It is there. Now, if you look at the tariff methodology, there is a document in the rate which is separate. There is a formula, but it was never implemented. We have been trying very hard to get it implemented at least once when the prices went down. But now there is no point in implementing it because prices are going up. So all this time the CPC price fixing is in consultation with the government. It is same for water as well. Right? Water, anybody from water? So water is also the same, and the government is have to approve it. So when it goes to the cabinet, because I think petroleum is worse. Water board is worse because the water minister and finance minister must agree. Then this is an interesting graph. I must say, the petroleum sales. Right? What is to notice this period? This is 1992 to 2014. Right? This is the period where we had been having all this independent power and large oil-based generation, expecting coal-fired power plants to come. Right? See the increase in petroleum use for power generation. And this it right went down there. This is a small thing which is propped up. But still, this is a substantial amount of money gone out of the country just for power generation by oil. How many years? Nearly 20 years. So this again the same thing. Electricity sector had been consuming from 2000 up to about 2014. And it had gone down thereafter. Transport occupies the highest amount of oil, private transport, buses, trains. Right. Now, some of you came late, and at the beginning I was telling that the one which will be posted in the web will be more comprehensive than these slides, because I have many more slides which are of facts or data, so you can refer to those numbers and form your own opinion. So look at those things, but this is also I will make available to the secretariat. This is a condensed version of that, but the fuller one is the other one, right? So down, again I am just summarizing what had been happening. The energy, as we would otherwise have seen, otherwise not have seen, it is a matter of socially important rather than of any engineering, because energy basically we thought it's a subject of physics. Energy, we first came across energy in physics, no? But it is not so. It is almost a social phenomenon No. And also now, I talked about the initial stages, the safety concerns of the British governments and all. Later, there was a time before the Electricity Act of 1950. Electricity, now there is a common occurrence of electricity theft nowadays. I have come across people stealing, tapping electricity, tapping wires, meter tampering, all these things. There was a court decision in between before 1950 saying that electricity is not capable of stealing. Right? So that, I think there would have been electricity law. Not there, no Department of the Government Electrical Activity has gone to the courts for somebody stealing electricity. The court has decided electricity is not a thing which could be stolen. It is not a tangible thing because for the crime of robbery or the crime of stealing, it has to be a tangible thing. So electricity is not tangible, but it was corrected in 1958 that stealing electricity is a separate offence now, and it continues to be. Now see, the electricity being a dangerous thing and which was capable of stealing also, and later when it came to 2002 or so, it was traded. We were buying and selling electricity. Right? So it is a commodity it has become. Trading means marketing, it's a commodity. Right? So now the commodity has become a social phenomenon. Right? So that is the transgression of the electricity from early times now. Thinking that whole picture, bigger picture, and you can surmise that or extend that to your own imagination what will happen in the future. But this is what had been happening. So it is no longer a commercial matter. And the government cannot take a commercial decision of that. Because everybody will shout here, citing various social requirements, various industrial requirements, various profit requirements, unimaginable things. So it is no longer commercial now. Right? So that is why the government is scared to take a decision on that. Right? Usually now, this what has happened. Usually the tariff changes happen right after an election. Right? And the unity reducing now, also like again, then I was telling the regulatory models which are applicable, which have been successful in various other places, will not work for us. So we have to have our own ones, taking into account all these other intricacies into account and devise our own regulatory model. Even this regulatory model, the biggest thing, although I have put the 4 clauses there, which was not there at that time, is that this is not implementable. This is not implementable because all the entities of that structure are owned by the government. Right? Lanka Electric Company, though it is a subsidiary of CEB, right? 53% owned by CEB. So it is effectively in government. All the other 6 licenses are CEB itself. Right? So it is also government. Then independent power producers are not subject to regulation, so there is nothing that anybody could do. So with this all governmental entities involved in electricity generation and distribution, if the PUCSL needs to impose something, fine or anything on the non-compliance of CEB or DECO, what will happen? It's the government which will be paying them. Right? If CEB does not comply with any of the PUCSL restrictions, there are very malicious provisions in the Act so that there is a penalty, huge penalties are imposed. So if a penalty is imposed on CEB, what will happen? Will the employees pay? Pay. Employees cannot pay. These are huge, horrendous sums. Right? So, there is no way that it could be implemented. It has to be paid by the government. And you can't give it to consumers also. And you are giving it to consumers will die. That is totally wrong in that sense. So, there is no way that it can, there are no checks and balances within that structure, because that structure was made in 2002 for separate entities. I am not saying separate entities were good or bad, or saying this single thing is good or bad. But it was done for some other structure and now being implemented in a different structure. That is the problem. So you have to solve these structural problems first. I don't know the way, there are hundreds of ways of doing that. So this is what happened. There is no incentive of checks and balances by anybody for the regulation of the sector, apart from those four processes. So that is why I had been saying best regulation is self-regulation. If CEB is interested, CEB's distribution licenses are interested, you regulate yourself so that internally you know that you are doing the right thing. It is also very difficult because a lot of people, a lot of different people. So self-regulation, we cannot have for electricity or infrastructure sectors alone because the whole country is not self-regulated. People are all breaking something, some law, sometimes even traffic. It is said that not in Sri Lanka, anywhere in the world, 2 offences per kilometer driving. In Sri Lanka, it may be more. So that is the level of self-regulation we have. So, if the regulatory setup is not perfect, the best way is to self-regulate. That's all I can imagine. Right? So, thank you very much for listening. And if you want any information or any clarification, you can send me an email. I will try to respond as soon as possible. Any question at the last moment for you? Any other question?
LAF is also in petroleum.
Yeah, LAF is in gas. So they are regulated by the Consumer Cash Authority. LAF and Litro both. They are companies. Litro is also government companies. Pertaining. So it's a piece of
You have to come to the middle. Come to the middle, out of the phone.
No, there is no problem.
This is microphone up there.
Anyway, in absence of it, and also for the latecomers, I will again tell what I had been telling the other people at the beginning. The answering of questions, there had been very poor answers given last 2 times actually, I thought twice. One is, I suspect that you all are not reading the question, right? Because some answers are totally irrelevant. I thought there is something wrong with me, and I asked one of the other people also, and then ISL did a survey also on all the questions, and these medians were found, and some people, median was 7, 5, like that. So it cannot be the case. So I am pleased that it is not a fault of the examiners, but the people who had been writing, answering. So one thing is, as I have told, there are certain essay type questions given. I don't know how to tackle those things, but short questions, you have to give weight to all the words in that question, right? And also I mentioned which critical thing, so use this critical, you have to use it. Now I have been doing law in Open University. By the time I had done a lot of exam papers, and all these papers are finished 70 at first time. The first paper we sat and we had field engineers taking LLB course there. First, and also there was certain other employed people also, right? In the organization. All of them, there was a first paper, it was not an exam, but it's we call it assignment, right? It's like a turn test, but it is conducted in an exam hall. Everybody 0, 1, 2, like. So then what the Open University did was called the whole batch and gave a lecture how to answer questions. Right? Because answering the law questions is different from answering engineering questions. Right? You go for an answer and you get the everything. But these are not like that. You have to talk about various things, the other side of it, and how you arrive at these things, and there is a way of the other employed people or engineers did not know how to answer. That is why marks were solo. So from there onwards, we also fixed that. And the answers now. Here also, now this society or the infrastructure, this paper is something of that sort. Everybody says questions of that nature, and you have to give different views, opinions, and also show that you are competent in the subject. I think there is another lecture for you how to answer questions again. So probably these things will come into light, the recent findings. But what I have seen is that you had not given answer, and that was a common pattern, not only among you. Right? I have been teaching at places also. Even those students are like that. So maybe something coming from the education system. Right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Wish you all the best.